Lyrical Monasterio Set 4 is coming out in English, and with that comes new cards, new upgrades, and most importantly of all, new ride lines. In these series of deck tests, I will be going over the ride lines, their strengths, weaknesses, playstyles, and overall competitive viability for this upcoming format. I will also be featuring and commentating over test games with my teammates on CFA. The first one we'll be going over are the series of Sharing Power Succubus Sisters, Charmout, and the Lavores. Before we go on though, if you enjoy our videos, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It really means a lot to all of us on the team. Thank you so much. Also, in these deck tests, the list that we make and the suggestions we make are not the be-all end-all. Think of them more like skeletons, and how you fill the meat and the muscles on the skeleton are completely up to you. With all those things in mind, let's get back to the video. Charmout, like most ride lines, is built around the Grade 3's main abilities. Charmout has two. The first one allowing you to call up to 2 Lavores from your soul with different names and then powering up your vanguard by 5,000 power. This in turn synergizes with their second ability, which upon attack allows up to 3 of your other Lavores to match Charmout's current power. This allows for your other columns to hit for massive power even if your vanguard only has 23,000 power. However, there is incentive for Charmout to be at 33,000 power or more, and that's with the second part of her second skill. If the opponent's vanguard's on grade 3 or greater, you can Soul Blast 2 to allow one of your back row center Lavores to attack and perform a drive check when attacking, increasing your offensive pressure and defensive power in one fell swoop. This means that the rest of the support is built around 2 main things: increasing your vanguard's power so that your other rearguards can become heavy hitters, and maintaining 2 soul at all times so that you can consistently use Charmout's Soul Blast 2 in the late game. The other Lavores are of course essential, not just in the ride line but within the deck itself. There are only 3, the grade 0, the grade 1, and the grade 2. SœurS, while being your average D-Series starter, must be played in this deck because it can be called from Soul and made into a very powerful attacker or booster due to Charmout. Also, since it is preferable to play the other Lavores at max copies in the main deck, try to keep this card in your Soul as much as possible unless you have already called it out with Charmout. The grade 1, Hadia, acts as a dual core dragon for its ride line effect, calling itself out for an early game attack and then returning to the soul in preparation for your turn 3 while also soul charging. Its second effect is also an amazing source of draw power for the deck, as it can be activated by either attacking or boosting. The power threshold is also not hard for this deck to achieve in the slightest, and it returns another Lavores into the soul, allowing for the use of Charmout's first effect on the following turn. The grade 2, Kalmina, has a very familiar effect if you played with cards like these, allowing you to ride without discarding a card as long as you have 2 different named Lavores in the soul, which is made to be comically easy because of Hadia's effect. With this, you can guard early and keep yourself at 1 damage, or conserve your hand against decks that pop off on turn 3 or more. Her second effect is also incredible for allowing you to countercharge and soul charge as long as it's chosen by the ability of your Charmout, allowing you to use extra CB during the turn and getting more soul for Charmout's second effect. Only 3 specific support cards are necessary in Charmout builds, the first one being the grade 3 Dream Splurging Ramona, who can maintain the 2 soul by putting itself and another rearguard into soul while also drawing a card and powering up your vanguard by another 5,000. Overall, it's a great card that accomplishes both conditions for Charmout's second effect. The only downside is that it technically is a -1 since you take 2 of your rearguards off the board only to receive 1 draw in return, so keep that in mind. The second support card is the grade 2 double rare Magician's Work Colby, who only has 1 on-place effect to power up your vanguard by 5,000 for a counterblast and then draws a card as long as your vanguard's power is 23,000 or higher. Be sure to use this effect only when Charmout's power is 18,000 or higher because you never want to refuse that draw, and a CB for power is never worth it. Their last card is their archetypal triple rare grade 1, Vivid Night Festival Aurealis, who unlike the other 2 has an effect that is not restricted to being on Charmout. It can search any grade 2 or lower Lavores from the deck for a CB, thinning the deck while also making it easier for Charmout to power up 3 Lavores with different names. After using this effect, depending on which one you search from the deck, be sure to use Charmout's effect to call the other 2 Lavores from Soul with different names from that unit you searched, which can guarantee the triple power up. Her second effect also allows you to power up the vanguard by resting itself. Along with that, it puts a Lavores into soul from drop, just in case you do not have enough soul for the Soul Blast 2, or do not have enough applicable targets to call off Charmout's first skill. A card that is not tangentially related to Charmout, but might as well be, is blue-haired prodigy Resius, who only has 3,000 power, but when it is placed, you can give one of your other units plus 1,000 power, which can easily power up Charmout to max potential. Here is a deck list that we have constructed for Charmout. The extra 4 cards in our main deck are being used for Eureka, which can bounce our Resiuses that we use in the early game, and bounce our Orialises to use its search effect on the following turn. As for Regalis piece, you could go for Gratias Graudale for the extra Persona ride. However, we have instead decided to go for the standard pick of Evergreen Transfere to have an extra 25k shield and the potential to lessen the impact of our opponent's overtrigger. For trigger ratios, we have gone with the standard 8 crit, 3 draws. Fronts are not worth it in this deck because our numbers are already big enough, and we do have an attacker in the back row that we would want to put our trigger bonuses on in certain instances. 4 vanilla heals for this skeleton, but feel free to change it based on your locals or regional events. Once Shinobi comes out, I would probably switch these out for the Restander counter heals. Finally, for your overtrigger, you play Volknot, as its ability to make any rearguard a Restander is incredibly powerful, especially if you also give it the 100 million power. But also, if you put it on the back row Lavores that gets the ability to drive check, it will be able to drive check twice on that turn, which is extremely fair and extremely balanced. Some strengths of the Charmout deck are its high power columns, easy to achieve conditions, and great pressure in the late game with extra drive checks. Weaknesses, however, are its tendency to struggle against early rush, especially that of the token variety, only being a 3 attack deck when going first, and not having as big of a hand at the end of the turn 3. Unlike other lyrical decks, there isn't much room for variety in playstyles or builds with Charmout. What you see is what you get, but the thing you're looking at is pretty good. I would say out of all the new ride lines in set 4, she is definitely the most competitively viable for this format. She already has quite a few tops in Japan and can have a very good matchup against some of the most powerful decks in the set 13 meta. Competitive wise, I would give this deck a solid 4 out of 5. Now that we have gone over the deck, I'll be featuring 2 test games that were played with one of the team members on Card Fight Area. Thank you so much to my team for helping me with these replays. I hope you enjoyed this deck overview and learned something from it. And I'll see you on the next one. Now, on with the test. Alright, so starting off the deck test, we have me versus Lupe. Lupe is playing Jeweled. He's going to start by riding the grade 1 Jewel Core Dragon and passing the turn. Now it's our turn. We will draw 1. We will pitch the Calmina. We don't really need it in this turn. We can search it next turn. Accidentally create the energy generator. Let's not do that. Draw a card, and then we're going to swing for 8. He's going to no-guard this, which is actually very great for us. We check OT. Unfortunately, there is no real good target to call the OT's effect, so we just decided to give the 100 million power to the Vanguard and then draw 2, since you don't actually have to call a card off Volknot's second part of his skill. And Lupe takes damage and it is a crit. So that's really good, helps us refuel our hand, helps us get a better turn 3, which honestly is the goal in Charmout, is to get a really good turn 3. Now moving on to his next turn, he rides into Jewel Yield and calls Jewel Core. He calls the Searcher to check top 7, but unfortunately he does whiff, which is really good for us, but really bad for Lupe. Now he's going to enter battle phase and then swing for 18 on Van. We're going to no-guard that. He's going to check crit, which is really unfortunate for us, but we do check 2 defensives in return. So now Jewel Core cannot hit, and so he's forced to go back into the Soul. We're just checking his Soul, and he did Soul Charge a Draco Kid. We're going to discard, I forgot what I discarded here, it's kind of a debate. I think I discarded the draw trigger. I did, yes. Discarding the draw trigger. In order to ride the Calmina, we're going to use the effect of our Haladia to call from Soul and then Soul Charge. We're going to call Eureka and then call Resius to give our Vanguard 10k. We're going to call Orialis. We're going to use the effect to search. And call. We're going to swing for 11 with Resius. He's going to take it and check a crit and use the effect in order to Soul Blast to grab it back. We're going to boost with our Calmina. He's going to guard with a crit, making it 1 pass. We check nothing. And then afterwards, we're going to use Haughty as the effect to put both those rearguards into Soul and then draw a card. So we have a pretty sizable hand right now, and Lupe's going to obviously go to his next turn. He's going to ride into Jewel. He's going to Soul Charge, draw 1. Unfortunately, it's not too great for him. He's going to Soul Charge 2 off of Jewel's skill and draw a card. It doesn't seem like he has the grade 4 in hand at this point, so he's probably just going to just swing with his Vanguard. But to my surprise, he actually does call the Zagon from his hand. But to my surprise, he actually calls the Zagon and uses the effect of Soul Charge. I think he just moves him up since he has nothing else better to call. Next up, he is going to enter battle and swing with your Jewel. He cannot use the effect because he does not actually have grade 3 in Soul. So we're just going to no-guard that. He's going to check a crit, giving all the effects, or giving the power to Zagon, the crit to Van. Second check, no trigger. We're going to check a crit, and we're going to check a draw. We check mega defensives in this game, so now that can't hit, and we're going to go to our turn, standing and drawing. We're actually going to ride for free because of Calmin's effect, riding to our Charmout. We're going to use the effect of Aurealis to rest herself, putting a Calmina into the Soul to give her Vanguard 5k power. And then we're going to call our Colby, use her effect, counter +1, give her Vanguard 5, and then she's 23, we can draw. Now we're going to call, use Ramona's effect, putting both those regards into the Soul, drawing 1, giving her Vanguard 5k. And then finally we're going to use Charmout's effect, counterlasting 1 in order to call the grade 0, which you pretty much always want to call, and the grade 1. Now we actually have the grade 2 in our hand that we can call, but first we're going to call Resius to power her Vanguard to an absurd 43k. And now we're just going to go in. We're going to use our Vanguard's effect to make our grade 0, grade 1, and grade 2 43k, which is extremely powerful. Our columns are going to be hitting for extremely massive numbers, and since we're actually going second, we can use Charmout's effect to make our back row rearguard an actual attacker and give it a drive check. Our drive checks are really nothing too eventful. Then we're going to swing with our grade 0, with our SœurS. We're going to check nothing, so he only takes 1. Then we're going to swing for 51. I'm going to take it. It is a Valtraxia. And we're debating if we want to use Eureka, which we will. And then we're going to swing for 53. He's going to PG that. Now, this is where like the optimal testing really like kind of left the room, because Lupe just didn't draw into the grade 4. To be honest, if he did draw into the grade 4, I would have been able to survive, but he would have had a much bigger hand. So he calls it, and he doesn't use its skill because he can't. I actually remind him of this in the game, but that's fine. He thought he had the grade 4. He's going to call another Zagon. He actually soul charges the grade 4, which is very unfortunate. And he's going to use Jewel's effect in order to CB1 soul charge 2. And unfortunately, he does see only 2 triggers. So you actually can't draw a card here. Very unfortunate. So yeah, this game wasn't exactly the most optimal in terms of Lupe's game plan, but in terms of showing off what Charmout can do, I think that this deck performed extremely well for its first turn 3 and shows how fast Charmout can come back from a beatdown as long as you draw into your pieces, very similar to a deck like Dimension Police. He's going to swing with his Vanguard, and he now has a grade 4 in Soul, so you can actually use the Soul Blast 4 to make our Vanguard's power 1, and he gets a crit, but it's not as good as it would be on an Ignis. I decided to play it safe here. Even though I do have the Regalis piece, I played it safe here by just PGing and discarding the Eureka, and then he checks Rocker and a Valtraxia. He's going to swing at 10 on the rearguard. We're going to guard that. He's going to commit to the rearguard, which makes me not want to guard it. So I just decided it's not even worth it. Now we're going to stand and draw. We actually top deck Persona, which is very nice. Unfortunately, we don't have that many tools that can power up our Vanguard. We only have Charmout's effect. And then we do have our Resius in order to power our Vanguard to 38. One thing about Persona that's interesting is that like it doesn't really work too well with Charmout because your units are always going to match the power of your Vanguard. So Persona Ride does affect it, but not as much as other decks normally would. We're going to use Charmout's effect to power up our 3 different named Lavores. and we Soul Blast 2 to make our back row center rear guard circle a drive checker. Lupe's going to say no guard, and he's going to check 2 normal units, he checks a crit, and on to the next game. Next game we're playing against Orist, which is Lupe's favorite deck. You can actually check out the deck profile we do right in the description, or I'll put a link in the description, I'll put a little time code right here. He's going to ride into Rootis and add the world card to his hand. And he's going to pass turn. We're once again going second, which is a little unfortunate, but I mean, I guess we can do the Soul Blast 2 right away. Today I'm going to discard here. We actually will discard the Persona since we are going second. And we're going to ride into our Hadia. We're going to swing with Hadia. He's going to pass turn. He's going to no guard. And we're going to check a draw. He checks no trigger. He's going to discard the critical trigger to ride into his grade 2. He's going to call Cyber. He's going to call in Cyber. He's going to activate its effect to create a Dragon Tree marker, and then search his deck for the Mask of Hydra. He's going to then set his world card and use the effect to Soul Blast 1, draw 1. He doesn't actually do this right now, but he will do it later. He actually gets the 5k power off of Cubicia's effect to the Vanguard, so keep that in mind. He's going to call Grunder. He's going to check top 7 to mill up to 2 world cards, but unfortunately for Lupe, he actually whiffs off this top 7, which is very unfortunate. He tries to make up for this by calling another Grunder from his hand to rear circle and tries to use the effect again, but ever so unfortunately he does whiff. He's going to swing for 15 on our Vanguard. We're going to no guard this. He's going to check a Cyber, and we check a defensive draw, shutting off the rest of his turn. Now we're going to go into our grade 3 turn. We actually draw into a ton of interesting things here, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ride discard to ride into our grade 2 Kalmina. We're going to use the effect of our Hadia. We do not want to be under the wrath of Orphis Mask, so we are going to swing in the rear guard since they don't tend to play Bubble Mine. This is actually a very good strategy if your opponent does leave rear guards open in the front row. Be sure to not give them a face-up damage. Most lists don't play Bubble Mine, and we're going second, I should say, against Orphis Mask is very dangerous. So he rides into Regis. He uses the effect of his Eclipse Moonlight to call a Shadow Army token. So that's very good for him, very good for his offensive pressure. But unfortunately there's not a lot more that he can really do. He's going to move Grunder up. He's going to activate the Mask of Hydra, searching top 5 for a Dragon Tree or a Mask unit, and he actually does find the Orphis Mask. However, he's not going to use the effect. He is going to wait until he can do the Persona ride and he has to face up damage. It makes no sense to ride up now. He's going to swing for 13 on our Vanguard, and we're going to take it. He checks over trigger, which, like, if I didn't have the PG, I would have just straight up died here. Gives all the effects, obviously. Gives 100 million power, which doubles to 200 million power to Grunder. And we're going to check 2 damage. First one with the heals, which do heal down to 2. He's going to swing with Cyber for 35, and we're going to guard for 40. Lupe just forgot to draw off the OT. We're going to guard for 40 with the 20k that we have on our Vanguard. And then he's going to swing for 200 million, and we're going to take 2 damage. Checking a crit there, kind of unfortunate because we wanted to be able to close out the game. He's using Grunder's effect to retire himself to grab a world card. Now we're going to ride for free off Kalmina's effect into our Charmout. We're going to do a couple of things here. We're just going to pop off. We're going to activate our skill Aurealis to search our deck for a Hadia, put it into our hand. We're going to use the second effect to rest, put a Hadia into Soul to give our Vanguard 5k. Then we're going to call Ramona, use the effect, put her and Aurealis into Soul, draw 1, get 5. Then we're going to use the effect of Colby, getting another 5, drawing another 1, drawing to a third Resius, which is extremely powerful. We're going to use Charmout's effect, calling the grade 0 and the grade 2. I don't know why I called the grade 1. We're going to call the grade 0 and the grade 2. And then we're going to give her 5k. We're going to call 1 Resius, give him 10k, 1 Resius, get another 10k, and then last Resius to get the other 10k. Then finally we're going to call over the Resius for the Hadia, and now our Vanguard is at a nice healthy 63k power, which is extremely powerful. We're going to swing, use the effect to make 3 of our units 63k power. On top of that, our grade 0 SœurS can now attack from the back row, and it can perform a drej check. So Lupe's hand is big, but I took a guess that it was a phantom hand, and he kind of confirmed it for me for like no guarding. And fortunately for us, we do check the crit here, which basically allows us to win the entire game, because even though he checks 2 defensives here, the numbers are simply too big, and Lupe doesn't have enough cards in hand to actually guard. The next attack is 66, and the last attack is 83. So those games just showed how powerful Charmout's turn 3 can be going second. No games going first, unfortunately, and Lupe shows his hand here. He just like mega bricked with like 3 Orphis masks, like no shield, but that sometimes can happen in the game, and I'm glad that we got to show Charmout's full potential. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Thank you guys so much for watching this recap, and let us know if you enjoy it, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye guys.